At the same time, the emergency broadcast signal cut through every communication network in the galaxy. Without warning, screens came to life on thousands of worlds, in millions of homes and government buildings. The signal had the highest priority designation, which was a code that hadn't been used in over 100 years. People stopped what they were doing. People stopped talking in the middle of a sentence. Government workers hurried to their communication centers. As the transmission started, military leaders stood at attention. What showed up on those screens shocked everyone who saw it. High Commander Threxus of the Zelvari Empire stood in front of the camera, and he looked like a shell of his former self. People who had seen him before, standing tall and proud in his ceremonial armor, had a hard time recognizing the figure now shown all over the galaxy. His uniform, which had once been clean and decorated with medals of victory, was now ripped in many places. The fabric was scarred by burn marks. The left sleeve was empty, and instead of his arm, there was only a rough medical brace quickly attached to the stump. His face, which had once been full of the arrogant confidence of a general who had never lost a battle, was now covered in new scars that ran across his forehead and cheek. What was worse than the physical damage was what was in his eyes. Fear. There was no doubt that the Zelvari commander's eyes were full of fear. People who knew Threxus personally felt a chill run through their bodies. This was a person who had led the biggest army in all of space. A leader who had taken over hundreds of worlds. A warrior who had never lost a battle in his whole life. And now he stood in front of the galaxy, broken and scared to death. The Zelvari Empire was famous. They were in charge of more than 400 star systems that covered huge areas of space. Their military fleet had thousands of ships, and each one was more advanced than most species could ever hope to build. For more than 800 years, they had grown their land without losing a major battle. Other civilizations either joined them willingly or were forced to do so. The Zelvari way was to be in charge, and they had mastered it. But there was their high commander sending out a message that would change everything. Threxus cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse and strained as if he had been screaming for hours. "Attention all species of the galactic community," he said, and each word seemed to hurt him. "I am High Commander Threxus of the Zelvari Empire, and I am sending out a formal warning on behalf of my military and government. What I'm about to tell you could keep your whole civilization from making the same mistake we did." He stopped for a moment, and his chest rose and fell as if he were gathering strength to go on. His other hand shook a little as it held on to the edge of the console in front of him. "Do not engage humanity in warfare," Threxus said in a flat voice. "Don't make them angry by showing off your military might. Don't attack their outposts or colonies. Don't threaten their people or their land. Don't even make aggressive moves toward their space or interests." The camera angle opened up a little, showing more of the room behind him. The walls were broken and there were scorch marks and wires showing. This wasn't a real TV studio. This was a place where violence had happened not long ago. Behind Threxus, the broadcast started showing recorded footage that shocked and amazed people all over the galaxy. The pictures showed Zelvari warships, which were the best military ships in known space, burning and broken. Huge battle cruisers that should have been unstoppable were floating dead in space, their hulls ripped open and their lights out. Battle groups, formations that had conquered worlds, floated through space like broken toys. Military bases that had been there for hundreds of years were turned into piles of rubble. The defensive platforms that could destroy whole fleets were in pieces, their weapon systems melted, and their crews were gone. 3 months ago, Threxus said, his voice getting even more strained, our military command made a decision. We found a human mining colony in an area we thought was up for grabs. The name of it was Terran Outpost 7. Few people. Very few defenses. Just a few civilians mining minerals from a faraway moon. He looked right at the camera and the fear in his eyes grew stronger. We thought it would be an easy job. A show of strength to show that Zelvari is in charge in that area. We thought that the humans would see how strong our military was and choose to talk things out instead of fighting. Maybe they would pay their respects. They might just leave the area behind. We had done this with other species hundreds of times before. The video behind him changed to show what looked like a small settlement on a moon with no life. Basic structures. Tools for mining. Nothing that looked very valuable or important. We sent 3 of our warships. More than enough to beat any opposition. We easily took over the colony. To make sure they would work with us, we took 6 of their people hostage. We told the people in charge that the Zelvari Empire now owned the land. Threxus's voice got harder, and there was something in it that sounded like bitter regret. We were wrong. About everything. About how they answered. About what they can do. About what they would be willing to do. The video changed again, and this time it showed Zelvari fleets running away. Dozens of ships jumping away as fast as they can, obviously trying to get away from something. Smaller human ships were chasing them and they wouldn't stop. Threxus said, "The people gave us a warning. 24 hours to bring their people back and leave their colony. We thought their warning was funny. We thought it was just empty talk from a species that only has a few hundred star systems. We had 400 systems. We had a lot of ships. What could they do to us?" He moved closer to the camera, and his scarred face filled the screen. He held the console so tightly with his other hand that his knuckles turned white. "I'm sending this warning because other species, governments, and military commands need to know what we learned too late. What we bought with ships, blood, and pride." The video showed even worse pictures. Zelvari admirals are being led away by human soldiers while they are tied up. Huge fleets of hundreds of ships are sitting still in space, their weapons powered down in surrender. Planetary defenses are down and abandoned. "If you attack humanity," Threxus said in a voice that was barely above a whisper, "if you threaten their people, if you take even one of their civilians hostage, know this: escape is impossible." He let those words hang in the air for a long time. Not hard. Not impossible. Not impossible. Not possible. Completely, totally, and absolutely impossible. Threxus stood up as straight as his injuries would let him, trying to remember how he used to act in the military. "They will find you. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter how far you go into space that you don't know about. It doesn't matter how well you hide in dead zones, asteroid fields, or nebulas where sensors don't work. They will follow you. They will look for you. And they will never stop." The show showed video that seemed impossible. Ships from Earth showing up in Zelvari space, which is heavily defended, as if the defensive networks weren't there. People walking through solid walls with technology that didn't follow the rules of physics. People's ships moving in ways that shouldn't have been possible and avoiding gunfire that should have been unavoidable. "We tried everything," Threxus said, his voice getting more and more desperate. "We ran to systems that were far away. We hid in places we thought no one would be able to find. We went back to our home world where our whole fleet of defenses was waiting for us. Nothing worked. They found us in every place. They got past our defenses like they weren't even there. And every time we said no to their simple request to give them back their people and turn over those responsible, they took more of our ships. More of our officers. More of our pride." The video changed one last time, and it looked like a formal surrender ceremony. There were dozens of Zelvari officers standing in a line with their heads bowed. Human soldiers processed them one by one. "This is not a threat," Threxus said, and tears were running down his scarred face. "This is not propaganda meant to make people look stronger than they really are. This is true. We learned the truth, but it cost our empire's power and reputation. We thought we were the strongest military force in the galaxy. We had never lost a battle. We had taken over hundreds of worlds." He stopped for a moment, trying to find the right words. "With just 12 ships, humanity taught us humility. Well, not 1,200. Not 12,000. 12 ships broke through our defenses, beat our home fleet, and took what they came for. In just 3 days." Threxus straightened up one last time, calling on the last bits of his military discipline. "Learn from our mistake. While I was in their custody, one of their officers told me a saying that the humans have. He told us, 'Don't start what you can't finish.' When we attacked their colony, we started something. We thought we could finish it on our own terms. We were wrong." His voice got lower, and it seemed to have more weight than a shout. "The people finished it. Completely. 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 They did it without thinking twice and without pity for those who threatened their people. And they did it in a way that made it clear how strong and capable they were." The transmission stopped suddenly. No official closing. No formal goodbye. There was nothing but silence as the screens across the galaxy went dark. Billions of people sat in stunned silence in government buildings, military command centers, homes, and public places. The Zelvari Empire, which had the strongest military in all of galactic civilization, had just sent out a warning to everyone in the galaxy. Don't fight humanity, because if you do, you won't be able to escape the consequences. The political leaders were getting more and more worried as they looked at each other. Military leaders started going over their own plans for defense and backup plans. Scientists began to gather all the information they had on human technology and abilities. And all over the galaxy, one question was on the minds of many. What had the humans done to bring the once great Zelvari Empire to its knees and make it afraid? The answer to that question would turn out to be even scarier than anyone had thought. 3 months before High Commander Threxus sent his warning to the galaxy, things were very different. No one dared to question the Zelvari Empire's authority when it was at its most powerful. High Commander Threxus sat in his command center on the Zelvari homeworld. This huge building was in charge of military operations in 400 star systems. There were displays on the walls that showed troop movements, fleet positions, and maps of the galaxy that showed how Zelvari's influence was growing steadily. Admiral Corvin came into the room while he was going over routine reports. Corvin was one of Threxus's most trusted officers. He had been in charge of many successful campaigns. He had a data tablet in his hand and looked like someone who was bringing good news. "High Commander," Corvin said with a formal salute. "I have an idea that I think you should think about." Threxus told him to keep going. Corvin turned on a holographic display that showed a small moon moving around a gas giant in a faraway star system. "This is Terran Outpost 7, he said. "It's a mining colony for people on what we think is the farthest edge of our expansion zone. For a while there has been a fight over the sector, with both us and the humans claiming rights to the mineral-rich systems there." Threxus looked at the display with interest. "Why is this outpost so important?" "There are a few reasons, Commander. First, the colony is mining very valuable rare minerals. Second, it's not very well protected. Our intelligence says there are only 2 guards and some basic shields. Third, and most importantly, taking over this outpost would make it clear that Zelvari is in charge of this whole area." Corvin got more information that was more detailed. "The number of people is very small. 47 civilians, most of whom were miners or support staff. At their normal speeds, it would take them 3 weeks to get to the nearest military base. We could take the building, claim the land, and be fully fortified before anyone could respond." Threxus thought about the offer as he leaned back in his chair. The people were new to politics in the galaxy. They had only been exploring space for 200 years, which was almost nothing compared to the Zelvari's 800 years of growth. The humans ruled about 50 star systems. They had some technological skills, but they were nowhere near as advanced as the Zelvari Empire. "What do you think we should do? What's your job?" Threxus asked. "A normal one," Corvin said with confidence. 3 warships should be enough. We land, take over the building, and hold the senior staff as guests to make sure they cooperate. After that, we tell the human authorities that Zelvari is now in charge of the area. They can talk about getting their people and equipment back, but the sector itself belongs to us." The Zelvari had used this plan successfully dozens of times with other species before. Show overwhelming force, take control quickly, and then negotiate from a strong position. Most civilizations chose to deal with the new situation instead of fighting a war they couldn't win. "Very well," Threxus said, and he made up his mind. "You have permission to go ahead. 3 warships like you said. Make the job clean and quick. I want as few deaths as possible if they help." Admiral Corvin gave a smart salute. "Yes, Commander, it will be done. Within a week we'll have the area under control." Admiral Corvin's 3 warships entered the system with Terran Outpost 7 2 weeks later. The ships were great examples of Zelvari military engineering. Each one was over a kilometer long, had a lot of weapons, and could destroy a whole fleet of smaller ships. The small human mining colony was on a barren moon. Its domed homes and mining equipment looked weak and unimportant in the vastness of space. The colony's shields were on, but they were only basic civilian-grade protection that wouldn't hold up against military-grade weapons. Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Fury, and watched the moon get bigger on the screen. Everything was going according to plan. "Open a line of communication with the colony," he said. A human woman's face appeared on the screen in a matter of seconds. She looked to be in her late 40s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and a face that looked like it had been through a lot of hard work. Her uniform made it clear that she was in charge of the colony. "Patricia Wells" was written on her name tag. She said calmly, "This is Administrator Patricia Wells of Terran Outpost 7. You are entering human territory that is off-limits without permission. Please tell me what you want." Admiral Corvin smiled, even though he knew the human probably couldn't read Zelvari faces well. "Administrator Wells, I am Admiral Corvin of the Zelvari Imperial Fleet. The Zelvari Empire now owns this system and all of its resources. Stop all work and get ready to leave, you and your people will say." Patricia's face didn't change. Her voice stayed steady and professional. "Admiral, the United Earth government is in charge of this colony. The Galactic Settlement Charter recognizes this system, which was registered under human territorial claims 12 years ago. What you're talking about is an act of war." Corvin's smile got bigger. "War? Look at your situation objectively, Administrator. You have 2 guards and civilian shields. I own 3 warships. The closest help is weeks away. There won't be a war." things will just change hands. Patricia said firmly, I need to get in touch with my government. Corvin said, no, and his voice got harder. Communication privileges are on hold. You and your senior staff will be guests on my ship. This will make sure that the rest of your staff works together. Get ready to leave in an hour. The talk was over. Corvin gave his tactical officer a nod. Start landing operations. I want to be in charge of that place in 2 hours. The 3 Zelvari warships flew down toward the surface of the moon. The colony's shields didn't stop the ships because they weren't made to stop military-grade ships. Zelvari soldiers rushed out of the landing craft and took up positions around the main living dome and the mining operations. The human settlers didn't fight back. They were not soldiers. They were civilians who knew they were completely outmatched. Admiral Corvin had complete control of Terran Outpost 7 within an hour and a half. Patricia Wells and 5 other high-ranking staff members were brought on board the Dominion's Fury. They were treated like professionals and given comfortable places to stay, but they were clearly prisoners. Corvin sent a formal message to the closest human colonial authority, which was a government office 3 systems away. The message was clear. The system belonged to the Zelvari Empire. The humans could talk about getting their people and equipment back, but they couldn't control the land anymore. 20 hours later, the human response came. Admiral Corvin, this is Captain Randy Bishop of the Earth Colonial Defense Authority. It was short and to the point. You have started a war against all people. You have 1 day to free all the hostages and leave Terran Outpost 7. This is your last chance. If you don't do what you're told, the military will take action. Admiral Corvin read the message and laughed out loud. His crew on the bridge laughed along with him. It was just too silly. A single human captain, who was probably in charge of only a few patrol ships, was threatening the Zelvari Empire with military action. Send a response, Corvin said with a laugh. Let Captain Bishop know that you heard his warning and are ignoring it. Zelvari still controls the area, and his people will be sent back when Earth agrees to accept our claim. The deadline of 24 hours came and went. Nothing took place. The Zelvari were in charge of the whole colony. The Dominion's Fury still had the human hostages on board. About 30 hours after the deadline had passed, something showed up on the Zelvari sensors. There was only 1 ship coming toward the system. The sensor operator looked over the readings very carefully. Admiral, we have a ship coming in. The configuration matches the way people designed it. It's a scout ship with light weapons. Only 1 ship, sir. Corvin got up to look at the sensor display. 1 boat. Did they really send 1 scout ship to fight 3 warships? It wasn't even a real warship. It was just a long-range scout ship that people used to explore and survey systems. Corvin said, and you could hear the disbelief in his voice. The human ship entered the system and sent a message over an open channel. Admiral Corvin, I'm Commander Frank Decker of the Earth-ship Pathfinder. I'm here to get our people back and take back our colony. Put down your weapons and let the hostages go right away. Corvin looked at the communication display with real shock. 1 lightly armed scout ship, and the commander was giving him orders? Commander Decker, Corvin said, not trying to hide his amusement, you are either very brave or very stupid. You have a scout ship against 3 Zelvari warships. Before I decide to add your ship to our collection, I suggest you turn around and go home. There was a break. Then Commander Decker's voice came back, and it was no longer friendly. It was cold and final. Admiral Corvin, we gave you 24 hours to do this the easy way. You were told what to do and given a clear choice. You chose not to listen to that warning. You are completely responsible for what happens from now on. Are you making a threat? Corvin asked. With just 1 scout ship? No, Admiral, Decker said softly. I'm not making threats against you. I'm letting you know what the promised consequences are. You hurt our people. You held civilians hostage. You didn't listen to our warning. Those were the options you had. Decker's voice got even colder. You were told. You picked this way. Keep this in mind in the next few weeks as you try to figure out what happened. You made this choice. You chose every single thing that comes next. The human scout ship made a sharp turn and sped up to faster-than-light speed, which made it disappear from the Zelvari sensors right away. Admiral Corvin and his bridge crew were quiet for a moment, but then Corvin started to laugh again. Everyone on the bridge joined in. The people had sent 1 ship, made empty threats, and then ran away with their tails between their legs. Well, Corvin said, wiping his eyes from laughing so hard, I think that settles that. Stay where you are and keep strengthening our hold on the colony. It's clear that the people don't want to fight for this land. His tactical officer agreed with him. Should we get ready for any follow-up, sir? No need, Corvin said. They sent one ship, but they left when they saw what was going on. We called their bluff and it worked. The Zelvari had no idea they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their empire, which lasted for 800 years. Commander Decker was not lying. He had been giving exactly what he said he would. A warning. A last chance to avoid what was coming. Admiral Corvin, who was sure of himself and full of himself, had chosen to ignore that warning. The Zelvari didn't even know that the countdown had started. Admiral Corvin was happy with how everything had turned out. He had been in charge of Terran Outpost 7 for 48 hours when he decided it was time to go back to Zelvari space. The point had been made. The humans had sent one scout ship which quickly turned around. It was clear that Zelvari now controlled the area. He told his 3 warships to get ready to leave. As insurance, the 6 human hostages, including Administrator Patricia Wells, would stay on the Dominion's Fury. If the humans wanted their people back, they would have to officially accept Zelvari control over the area in question. Set course for home, Corvin said from his bridge. We'll tell High Command about our success and let the diplomats take care of the talks from here. The 3 ships turned on their faster-than-light drives and left the system, leaving a small group of Zelvari troops behind to keep an eye on the human colony. The trip back to Zelvari space should have taken about a week, with a few stops along the way to get more fuel and supplies. Corvin got comfortable in his room and started writing the report he would send to High Commander Threxus about how well the operation went. After 6 hours of travel, everything changed. As Corvin was going over tactical information, his communications officer rushed into his room, looking worried for a Zelvari warrior. Admiral, we have a problem. There is no sound coming from our supply convoy. Corvin looked away from his screen. Tell me what you mean by quiet. Sir, we were supposed to meet up with Supply Group Delta in the Kelver system to get more fuel and food. They were supposed to get there 2 hours ago. They never came. For the past 90 minutes, we've been trying to reach them on every frequency. No answer. Nothing. Corvin felt a small knot of worry in his chest, but he pushed it away. Sometimes, supply convoys had problems with their equipment. There were many good reasons. Send one of our patrol ships to check out their last known position, Corvin said. Tell them to report back as soon as they find something. Yes, Admiral. The patrol ship, which was smaller and made for reconnaissance and quick response, quickly moved to the coordinates where the supply convoy should have been. Corvin went back to work, expecting a boring explanation in an hour. Instead, they got footage that scared everyone who saw it. The sensors on the patrol ship found the supply convoy exactly where it was supposed to be. But something was very wrong. There were all 4 supply ships there, floating in space without moving. Their engines weren't running. The lights were off. They were all dead. The patrol ship got closer and looked for damage. The sensors showed something that couldn't be true. There were no holes in the hull, no marks from weapons, and no signs of battle at all. From the outside, the ships looked fine. The patrol captain chose to board one of the ships to look into it. His team came in through the main airlock, which opened normally even though the ship's systems were down. What they found inside didn't make sense. All of the crew members were still there. But they weren't dead. They were out cold, lying peacefully at their posts as if they had all fallen asleep at the same time. Medical scans showed that they had been sedated, which means they had been given drugs that kept them alive but made them completely unresponsive. Someone had turned off every system on the ship by hand. Not broken or damaged, but turned off carefully. The engines were cold, but they weren't broken. The weapons were not connected to the internet, but they still worked. It was as if someone had carefully gone through the whole ship and turned everything off. The boarding team then found the message. Someone had left the same message in simple, clear writing on the main bridge display of every supply ship. The Zelvari translation systems had no trouble reading it. Return our people. This is your last chance. The patrol ship sent the video back to Admiral Corvin's fleet right away. The video of the unconscious crews, the ships that mysteriously stopped working, and the scary message were all part of the transmission. But the transmission was never finished. The patrol ship's signal just stopped halfway through sending the data. It was broadcasting normally 1 minute, and then there was nothing but silence the next. The sensors couldn't find the ship at all, as if it had never been there. Admiral Corvin stood on his bridge and looked at the frozen transmission on his screen that wasn't finished. The last picture showed the message on the supply ship's screen: "Bring back our people. This is your last chance." What just happened? Corvin yelled, his voice tense. Where did the patrol ship go? Unknown, Admiral, his sensor operator said, his hands moving quickly over the controls. One moment they were there, and the next moment our sensors show nothing. There is no debris field. No sign of energy. They just went away. That's not possible. Ships don't just go away. But it had happened. A Zelvari patrol ship had just disappeared right in front of their sensors. For the next 3 days, the nightmare got worse in ways that Corvin could never have imagined. A second patrol ship was sent to find out what had happened to the first one. It never returned. It stopped sending in the middle of a sentence and it disappeared from sensors just like the first one. Then it started happening to ships that weren't even looking into it. There was a cargo transport with Corvin's battle group that was there one moment and gone the next. It was carrying supplies and equipment. No warning. No call for help. Nothing but silence. Corvin told all of his ships to stay close together and stay in a tight formation. If something were hunting them, they would fight it together as a fleet. It didn't work. A different ship disappeared on the 4th day after leaving the human colony. This ship was a full-fledged warship, not a patrol boat or cargo ship. It was moving along the edge of their formation, not far from the flagship, only 2,000 kilometers away. The crew was in the middle of giving a normal status report when their transmission just stopped. The other ships quickly moved to its last known location. They didn't find anything. Not even a field of debris. Admiral Corvin stood in the middle of his bridge, watching his fleet get smaller and smaller every day. For the first time in his military career, he was really scared. He quietly told everyone to count off all ships. His communications officer went through the list. "Sir, we now have 12 ships in our original battle group of 15. We lost 3 ships from the group that took the human colony. We also lost contact with the supply convoy, 2 patrol ships and 1 cargo transport." The tactical officer for Corvin, who had been in many battles, spoke up with a shaky voice. "Admiral, may I speak freely?" "Okay. Sir, we're being hunted. I don't know how they're doing it or where they're hiding, but the people are out there. They're taking us out one by one." "That's not possible," Corvin said sharply, but he didn't sound sure. "We would find their ships. Our sensors are the best in the whole universe. We would see them coming." "Then how do you explain what's going on?" the tactical officer shot back. Corvin didn't know what to say. That night he made a choice. They would run. Not back to the human colony to give back the hostages. That would mean giving up and showing weakness. Instead, they would jump to a faraway system where the humans would never be able to find them. They would stay there until he figured out what was going on and how to deal with it. He looked at star charts and picked coordinates almost at random. A dead system on the far edge of known space that has no resources, colonies, or strategic value at all. There was no reason for anyone to be there. "All ships, get ready for an emergency jump," Corvin said. "Sending coordinates now. We jump in 60 seconds when I say so. Maximum speed and a random approach vector make tracking impossible." The timer started. The other 12 ships in his fleet turned on their faster-than-light drives. "Jump, now." As the ships jumped across light years in an instant, reality twisted around them. They came out in the dead system that Corvin had chosen, and sensors immediately scanned the area for any threats. The system worked exactly as the chart said it would. Nothing. Dead. A burned-out star and some rocks that don't have any life in them. There is only one thing. A human ship was already there, hanging still in space as if it had been waiting for them. Not a ship of war. It was just another scout ship, exactly like the one Commander Decker had used. It sat there quietly with its weapons cold and not making any aggressive moves. All of the Zelvari on all of Corvin's ships looked at their screens in shock. They had jumped to random coordinates in a system that had no value, using an approach vector that should have been impossible to guess. And somehow the people were already there waiting for them. A message was sent out by the human ship. This time it was a calm and professional voice. "Admiral Corvin, this is Captain Brian Torres of the Earth ship Wanderer. You need to know what's going on here. Someone is keeping an eye on you. We're already there waiting for you to jump and run to a new system. We can see you. We'll find you no matter where you go in this galaxy." Corvin's blood froze. "Bring back our people," Captain Torres said. "Give up the officers who were in charge of the attack on our colony. That's all we need. If you do this, the hunting will stop. If you keep running, we'll be there every time you think you've gotten away." Admiral Corvin didn't say anything. Instead, he yelled at the officer in charge of navigation. "Jump again. Different coordinates. Maximum randomization." The ships jumped right away, frantically trying to get to a different system. This time, Corvin picked a dense nebula, which is a part of space where sensors are so messed up that it's almost impossible to see anything. The nebula should mess up whatever way the humans were tracking them, if they were. His fleet came out of the clouds of gas and dust that were swirling around. It was hard to see anything. All the sensors showed was static. There was no sound for 10 minutes. Corvin let himself hope that they had finally lost the people who were chasing them. Then, out of nowhere, a ship showed up on their sensors, too close for comfort. It had been there the whole time, hidden in the nebula until it chose to show itself. Captain Torres's voice came through again, and this time it sounded almost like he felt sorry for the Admiral. "Admiral, you still don't understand. We're not after you. We don't want to catch up to you. We are already ahead of you. We are already at every place you can think of. There is no way out. There never was." Corvin fell into his command chair, unable to understand what was going on. They had jumped to random places. They had run away to systems that weren't important strategically. They were hiding in a nebula, where it should have been impossible to find them. And every time, the humans were already there, waiting patiently, as if they knew exactly where the Zelvari would run before Corvin even made the decision. "How?" Corvin whispered. "How are you doing this?" No one answered. The human ship just sat there in the nebula, a quiet reminder that there was no way to get away. As humanity's relentless hunt went on, more and more Zelvari ships were disappearing in the dark. The situation had gotten completely out of hand, and it was no longer just Admiral Corvin's problem. For the whole Zelvari Empire, it had turned into a crisis. High Commander Threxus was in the central command chamber on the Zelvari homeworld, surrounded by the Empire's highest-ranking military officers. There were huge displays in the room that showed where thousands of Zelvari ships were in hundreds of star systems. The room was meant to look powerful and confident. But today those displays showed something that no one had ever thought they would see. Ships made by people. In the Zelvari home system. A lot of them. The emergency council meeting was called just a few hours after the discovery. Every admiral, fleet coordinator, and strategic officer who could be reached had either come together in person or through a communication link. The mood in the room was tense, almost panicky. Threxus stood in the middle of the room, his body stiff from military discipline, but his eyes showed how hard it was for him. For more than 20 years he had been in charge of the Zelvari military. He had been in charge of taking over more than 50 star systems. He had never lost a fight or been in a situation he couldn't handle. Up until now. "Give me a full status report," Threxus said, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter in the room. "I want to know exactly what we're up against." Velthan, a senior officer who was in charge of the fleet, stepped forward and turned on the main display. It showed the Zelvari home system in great detail, with every ship, station, and defensive platform marked. "Commander, here's the deal," Velthan said, his voice calm even though he was clearly stressed. "We've lost 23 ships in the last 2 weeks. All of these losses happened while our troops were trying to find and protect Admiral Corvin's battle group, which has been having problems since their operation in human territory." "Problems?" another admiral said under his breath. "That's one way to say that ships just disappear." Velthan went on. "Our home fleet is still intact. We have 214 ships in defensive positions around our homeworld, including 12 capital ships, 57 heavy cruisers, and the rest are destroyers, frigates, and support craft. Our orbital weapons platforms are fully operational, and our planetary shields are at full strength." "And what about the people?" Threxus asked in a low voice. Velthan's face looked more worried. "Sir, we have confirmed that 47 human ships are inside our home system. They showed up about 6 hours ago, somehow getting past all of our early warning sensors, our defensive perimeter, and our scanner networks. We have no record of them entering the system. They were just there." People in the room started to worry. Admirals talked over each other, asking for answers that no one could give. Threxus raised his hand to ask for silence. "What kind of ships are we talking about?" "Mostly scout class," Velthan said. "Light ships made for exploration and reconnaissance. We've also found a few bigger ships that look like frigates or light cruisers. None of them have the same firepower or armor as our capital ships." One of the senior admirals, a veteran commander named Thexus, got up from his chair. "High Commander, if I may speak plainly." "Yes, you can." "Yes, there are 4 times as many of them as there are of us. Yes, their ships are smaller and less heavily armed than ours. But none of that matters if we don't know how they got here," Thexus said, pointing at the display. "We have the most advanced sensor network in all of known space. We have early warning stations all over this sector. We have patrol ships that are always on the lookout for any unauthorized entry. And yet, 47 ships got inside our defensive perimeter without setting off a single alarm." He stopped for a moment to let that sink in. "If they can do that, then our numerical advantage is useless. They can show up anywhere at any time, and we won't see them coming until they want us to." Everyone in the room stopped talking. Everyone knew Thexus was right, but no one wanted to deal with what that meant. Then what do you think we should do? Threxus asked. Give up right away? Before Thexus could respond, a signal came in saying that Admiral Corvin wanted to join the conversation. His flagship was still out in deep space, still carrying the 6 human hostages who had started this whole mess. Threxus gave the go-ahead for the connection. One of the screens showed Corvin's face and it looked awful. His uniform was messy, his face was tired, and his eyes looked like they hadn't slept in days. Hi, Commander, Corvin said, his voice shaky. I've been keeping an eye on things. We still have leverage. We still have their hostages. 6 human civilians. The humans value individual lives highly, it's one of their cultural weaknesses. They won't risk killing their own people in an attack on my ship. Threxus thought about this. It was true that people seemed to care a lot about individual lives, even when they were in the military. Maybe they could use this to their advantage. Very well, Threxus said. Get in touch with the human commander directly. I'll talk to them myself. Maybe we can come to an agreement that keeps the peace. The connection was made in a matter of minutes. The main display changed to show a woman in a military uniform. She looked to be in her early 50s, with short gray hair and a face that showed both intelligence and determination. There were badges on her uniform that showed she was a high-ranking officer, and her nameplate clearly said, Admiral Kate Morrison. She sat calmly in what looked like the bridge of a human ship. Her body was relaxed, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Hi, Commander Threxus, Admiral Morrison said in a polite and professional way. Thank you for opening this channel. I'm Admiral Morrison, the commander of the Earth task force that is currently in your system. Admiral Morrison, Threxus said in a calm and formal voice. Your ships are in Zelvari sovereign space without permission. According to galactic law, this is an act of war. I'm giving you a chance to explain yourself before we use force. Morrison's face didn't change at all. With all due respect, Commander, your troops attacked our colony first. You took our land and held our people hostage. We gave you many chances to settle this peacefully, but you ignored every one of them. We're ready to talk now, Threxus said, trying to keep his voice calm. We can surely come to an agreement that works for both sides. Maybe a prisoner exchange, along with a formal treaty that sets the limits of. No, Morrison said, cutting her off. Even though her voice was calm, that one word made it clear that there was no going back. Threxus felt like he was losing his cool. Excuse me? Morrison said clearly, the time for negotiation has passed, High Commander. You had weeks to talk things over and got a lot of warnings. You chose to ignore them all. Our terms are now very clear and they can't be changed. She moved forward a little bit. Give us back our people. All 6 of them unharmed. Surrender Admiral Corvin and all the officers who took part in the raid on Terran Outpost 7. Those are the only terms we will accept. If you don't accept them within the next 6 hours, we will leave your system peacefully. If you refuse, we will take what we came for by force. Threxus could feel anger rising in his chest. You are surrounded by the strongest military fleet in this whole sector, Admiral Morrison. You have 47 ships and we have over 200. Your ships are smaller, less armed, and outnumbered. You can't possibly think you can win a military fight. Morrison tilted her head a little, as if she were thinking about what he said. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She grinned. The smile wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who knew something that the other person didn't. An important thing. Commander, she said softly, we've been following your ships through several star systems for the past 2 weeks. We've been inside your defensive perimeter for 6 hours without you knowing we were there until we decided to show ourselves. We've gotten past every sensor, every defense, and every safety measure you have. Do you really want to test our skills in real combat? Threxus was about to say something, but Morrison wasn't done. You're looking at ship counts and firepower ratings and trying to figure out the odds like this is a normal battle. But this isn't a normal battle. We didn't come here to fight a war. We came here to get our people back and hold you responsible for attacking them. That's all. But if you make us show you what our technology can really do, we will. And I promise you, High Commander, you won't like the results. Morrison's side ended the transmission before Threxus could answer. He stood there quietly, looking at the blank screen where her face had been. The council of admirals around him waited for him to make a choice. Get the fleet ready for battle, Threxus finally said. We'll show these humans what real Zelvari military power is. Get all ships ready for battle and coordinate firing solutions. We will attack in 1 hour. Admiral Thexus got up again. Commander, I have to object. We don't know what they can do. We don't know how they... Threxus said, I see your protest and it is overruled. We are the Zelvari Empire. We've never given up to anyone, and we won't start now just because a species that has only been in space for 200 years threatens us. The fleet started to line up for an attack. 214 Zelvari warships, the best military technology the Empire had ever made, lined up to fight the 47 human ships. It should have been a massacre on paper. The Zelvari had more people, bigger ships, stronger shields, and heavier weapons. Military strategists all over the galaxy would study what really happened in horror for years to come. The Zelvari attack started the battle. 50 ships fired at the closest group of human ships all at once, using enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The weapons came, but the human ships weren't there. They had moved, but not in a way that made sense. The Zelvari tactical computers showed the human ships in one place, figured out how to fire based on their speed and path, and then watched in shock as the ships suddenly appeared in a completely different place. One of the tactical officers yelled, "They're moving so fast that their ships should fall apart. The G-forces alone should kill their crews." But the human ships kept up their impossible dance, moving through the Zelvari formation like water flowing around rocks. The Zelvari weapons always hit their target, but the target was gone before the shot hit. Then the ships of people started firing back. The Zelvari had never seen weapons that were so accurate before. Instead of trying to destroy ships completely, the humans went after certain systems. One shot would stop an engine from working. Another would take out weapons arrays. A third would turn off life support. In the first hour, 12 Zelvari warships were floating in space, dead but not destroyed. They were just completely broken. The crews were alive but couldn't do anything. Their ships were just big, useless hulks. "How are they hitting us so accurately?" Threxus yelled from his command center on the planet's surface. His science officer was going crazy trying to make sense of the battle data. "Sir, their targeting is impossible. They're hitting weak points in our shields that they shouldn't even be able to see. It's like they know our ship designs better than we do, like they can see through our armor to the systems underneath." The fight went on for 6 hours. 6 hours of watching the pride of the Zelvari fleet being taken apart by a force that was outnumbered by more than 4 to 1. More than half of the Zelvari home fleet was out of action by the end of those 6 hours. And the ships of the humans had only a few scratches and minor hull damage. Nothing that made them less effective in battle. The general broadcast channel showed Admiral Morrison's face again. "High Commander Threxus, this is your last warning. We have shown that we can disable your entire fleet without destroying it. We don't want to kill your people or destroy your homeworld. We just want our civilians back and for those who attacked them to be held accountable. Stand down now before this gets worse." Threxus looked at the reports of casualties and damage that were scrolling across his screens. His fleet, which was strong and unbeatable, was being taken apart piece by piece. His hand moved toward the button that would tell everyone to stop fighting. But before he could give the order, something happened that changed everything. Admiral Corvin's flagship, which still had 6 human hostages, sent an urgent message. "All ships, this is Admiral Corvin. I will not surrender. I will not." The transmission stopped suddenly. Threxus brought up the video feed from Corvin's ship. What he saw made him feel cold all over. Somehow, a small human ship, not much bigger than a shuttle, had attached itself to the hull of the Dominion's Fury. And Threxus couldn't believe it when he saw human soldiers in armored suits just walk through the ship's shields and armor as if they weren't even there. They didn't get through. They didn't break. They just went through solid things like ghosts. "What's that technology?" Threxus whispered, not able to understand what he was seeing. His communications officer was able to connect to the internal security cameras on Corvin's flagship. The video showed human soldiers walking through the halls. Their suits somehow let them phase through doors, bulkheads, and walls. A woman was the team leader. Lieutenant Amy Parker's name was on the display of her helmet. The security video showed her walking onto the Dominion's Fury bridge. Corvin's guards shot at her with all the guns they had. The energy bolts went right through her phased armor and hit the walls behind her, but they didn't hurt her. She walked right up to Admiral Corvin, who was frozen in fear, and spoke to him in a calm, professional voice that the ship's translation system made clear. "Admiral Corvin, you are under arrest for attacking Terran Outpost 7 without provocation and taking human civilians hostage. Your military career is over. You have only 2 options right now." She stopped for a moment, and her phased armor made it possible for her face to be seen through the helmet. "Choice 1. You give up peacefully right now and face trial for what you've done. You accept the consequences of your choices. Choice 2. You try to run and we hunt you for the rest of your natural life. Every day, every moment you'll be looking over your shoulder, knowing that we're coming and that you can never hide from us. There is nowhere in this entire galaxy that will be safe for you. Lieutenant Parker moved closer to Corvin. So, Admiral, what will it be? The easy way or the hard way? I promise you, we have all the time in the world and we never give up once we start hunting. Admiral Corvin's knees gave way on the security camera. He fell to the floor of his own bridge, his voice barely a whisper. I give up. Please. I give up. Lieutenant Parker pointed to her team, who quickly started to gather the 6 human hostages. All 6 civilians were safely in human custody within minutes. They were led back through the phased armor to the shuttle that was waiting for them. They also put Corvin and his top officers in restraints and took them. The human task force started to leave the Zelvari home system because they had finished their mission. High Commander Threxus stood in his command center, surrounded by reports of ships that had been disabled and defenses that had been broken, trying to figure out what had just happened. 47 ships had brought down his empire, which was the strongest military force in the known galaxy. And the worst part, the part that would stay with him for the rest of his life, was realizing that the humans could have done so much worse. They could have completely wiped out the fleet. They could have taken over their home world. They could have taken over the whole empire. They had just taken what they needed and left. There was no doubt about the message. We can get in touch with you whenever and wherever we want. We can beat you whenever we want. But we don't want to unless you make us. Threxus looked at his missing arm, which he had lost when the human boarding team broke into his command center, and understood the awful truth. The Zelvari Empire had been living in a false sense of power. That illusion was completely broken by people. 3 months had passed since the event that shook the Zelvari Empire to its core. 3 months since people had shown skills that no one in the galaxy thought were possible. It has been 3 months since everything changed. High Commander Threxus was in a clean medical rehabilitation center on the edge of the Zelvari capital. The room was quiet, with only the soft hum of medical machines and the occasional beep of monitors keeping an eye on his recovery. He could see the big city below through the window, but it looked different now. Not as sure. Not as sure. He looked down at the spot where his left arm used to be. The stump had healed, but the limb was gone. It had been lost during the last battle when human forces broke into his command center. During the chaos, a support beam fell and trapped him under the debris. It was funny that a human soldier, one of the same troops that had come to arrest him, had pulled him out of the wreckage and given him first aid. They had saved his life so he could go to court for his part in attacking their colony. The injuries hurt, but they would get better. The damage to his pride, his empire's reputation, and the whole galactic order was much worse and might never fully heal. Threxus had asked the Zelvari Council for permission to send a message to the whole galaxy. Before finally agreeing, the council had talked about it for almost a week. They didn't want to, but they knew that other species needed to know what had happened. Needed to know what the new reality was for all of them. The broadcast had been sent out hours ago, and it had been sent to every major communication hub on thousands of worlds at the same time. Threxus had given his warning with as much dignity as he could muster, making it clear what happens when you attack people. He turned on his personal communication terminal while he was alone in his recovery room. The main broadcast was over, but there was still more to say. More information that military leaders and governments needed to know. He started a second transmission, this one aimed at military academies, strategic command centers, and government intelligence agencies all over the galaxy. Only the people who made decisions about war and peace would be able to read this message. Threxus's scarred face could be seen on screens in secure places all over known space. He started by saying, "I want to give you more information about my earlier warning." His voice was tired but clear. What I'm about to share comes from our time in human custody. During the weeks we spent imprisoned, awaiting trial, the humans did something unexpected. They allowed us access to their historical databases. They wanted us to study their past. They wanted us to understand not just what they had done to us, but why we never had any chance of escaping them. He stopped and took a deep breath. At first, we thought this was some kind of psychological warfare. A way to break our spirits even more. But as we learned more about their history, we realized that the humans weren't trying to break our spirits. They were trying to teach us something important about their species. Threxus turned on a screen that showed historical data that had been put together from human records. Humans have been fighting wars for as long as they have been around. There have been thousands of years of fighting. Small fights, big fights, wars between tribes, wars between nations, and wars that span the whole world. As we studied these wars, we found a pattern. A pattern that shows up in every war they have ever fought, no matter when it was or what technology they had. Pictures of ancient battles, medieval sieges, and modern warfare started to show up on the screen. When people go to war, when they really decide that something needs to be done, they don't stop until their enemies are completely defeated. No negotiated peace. No strategic withdrawal. No settling for partial victory. Total defeat. Complete elimination of the threat. Threxus brought up some specific examples. We found records of wars between humans fought with simple weapons like wooden ships powered by wind and soldiers carrying guns that took a whole minute to reload. In one of these wars, humans crossed entire oceans in these simple ships to fight their enemies. The journey took months and many died just from the trip. But they kept coming year after year, until their enemy was completely defeated. There were more pictures that showed different historical campaigns. In another war, human forces followed enemy armies across an entire continent for years. They fought in freezing winters and scorching summers. They got sick, starved, and lost a lot of men. They could have stopped dozens of times, declared victory, and gone home. Instead, they kept going until every last enemy stronghold was taken. Threxus's voice sounded empty. They even wrote down times when, after major wars were officially over, they spent decades looking for individual war criminals who had done terrible things. Decades. They chased single individuals across multiple countries, through political barriers and jurisdictional problems, never giving up until every last person responsible was brought to justice. He brought up one specific case. We found records of one enemy leader who went into hiding after a conflict. The humans pursued him for 10 years. 10 years of dedicated effort, following leads, gathering intelligence, coordinating across multiple governments. They never stopped looking. Never gave up. And eventually they found him just as they promised they would. Threxus leaned back and held on to the armrest of his chair with his other hand. People have a word for this trait. They call it determination, or seeing things through. They think it's a good thing and something to be admired and developed. They teach it to their kids. They celebrate it in their culture. They write stories about it and make heroes out of people with this trait. His voice got even more serious. We learned to call it something else. Inevitability. Once people decide that something must be done, it is almost impossible to stop them. And getting away from them? Not at all possible. The screen changed to show documents that had been shared during the talks to end the war. These were real military doctrine and strategy. Their military training manuals make it very clear. I'll quote directly, "Mission accomplishment is not optional. It is the fundamental purpose of military action. Retreat is merely temporary repositioning to achieve the mission through different means. Defeat is unacceptable and will not be tolerated." Threxus pointed out another part. Here's another quote, this one from a military leader from hundreds of years ago. "We will never give up. We will never give up. We will fight on the beaches, in the fields, in the streets, and in the hills. We will chase our enemies to the ends of the earth if necessary, but we will never accept defeat." He stared straight into the camera. That was written when people lived on just one planet. When the ends of the earth meant the farthest reaches of their homeworld. They've changed that idea for the space age. Now it's to the ends of the galaxy. The scale has changed. The technology has changed. But that basic human trait, that absolute refusal to give up once committed, hasn't changed at all. Threxus moved in his seat and winced because his injuries hurt. Let me be very clear about what happened to the Zelvari Empire. Let me explain in detail how badly we lost so that you can see how powerful humans really are. He looked at battle reports and numbers. We were the Zelvari Empire. We ruled over 400 star systems. Our military fleet was the biggest in this part of space, with thousands of ships that had been built up over 8 centuries of war and conquest. We had never lost a war. Not once in our entire history as a spacefaring civilization. We thought we were invincible because of our size, technology, and experience. His voice got rougher. With just 12 ships, humanity proved us wrong. Not 1,200, not 12,000. 12 ships. They broke through our most heavily defended system, avoided our sensor networks and early warning systems, defeated our home fleet of over 200 ships, and took both their civilians and our officers, all within 72 hours of entering our space. The screen showed footage of the battle, with human ships moving in ways that seemed impossible, phasing through defenses, and hitting targets with accuracy that seemed supernatural. Their technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. They have quantum phase systems that let their soldiers and equipment pass through solid objects. They also have tracking technology that can follow ships across multiple faster-than-light jumps and predict where they will go before they even choose a destination. Their ships move in ways that should break basic physics. They speed up at speeds that should turn their crews into paste, but they don't seem to be affected. Threxus stopped for a moment to let that information sink in. But here's what you need to know, what took us too long to realize. The technology isn't the scary part. Yes, their equipment is advanced. Yes, their capabilities were better than ours. But technology can be stolen, copied, or defended against if you have enough time and money. He leaned in closely. The most frightening thing about people is their way of thinking. Their philosophy. How they handle conflict. They don't fight for land, resources, or even glory or honor. They fight to completely get rid of threats to their people and their way of life. And once they've found something that is a threat and decided to deal with it, they will stop at nothing to achieve that goal. The display showed more video, including the rescue of the human hostages, the arrest of Admiral Corvin and his officers, and the methodical destruction of Zelvari resistance. I lost this arm when I tried to get away from the human team that came to get me, Threxus said, pointing to the empty sleeve. The battle outside was causing the building to fall apart around us. I thought that in the chaos I might be able to get away. Lieutenant Amy Parker, the human officer in charge of the arrest team, found me in the wreckage, pulled me out from under a collapsed beam that would have killed me, gave me first aid to stop the bleeding and then arrested me, all in about 5 minutes. He shook his head slowly. She saved my life so I could face trial for my crimes. That's the human way. They don't want genocide. They don't want to wipe out their enemies completely. They want justice. They want their people to be safe. They want threats to be stopped. But they go after those goals with the same unyielding determination that they've shown throughout their entire history. Threxus brought up the last message from a human that the Zelvari government had received after the war was over. The words were shown on the screen in a simple, clear way. We don't want to be your enemy, but if you make us your enemy, we will be the last enemy you ever make. Admiral Kate Morrison herself sent that message, Threxus said. The human commander who led the operation against us. And I believe every word of it is absolutely true. The humans don't want conflict. They're perfectly willing to be peaceful neighbors, trading partners, even allies. But if you attack them, if you threaten their people, if you cross that line. He stopped for a moment and his voice got lower. They're coming for you. Not maybe. Not possibly. Certainly. Inevitably. And you can't hide. You can't run fast enough. You can't talk your way out of it once you've made them your enemy. Threxus stood up as straight as he could, given his injuries. This is not propaganda. This is not an exaggeration meant to make people look stronger than they are. This is the whole truth, learned at the cost of our empire's pride, power, and reputation. We attacked a small human mining colony and took 6 civilians hostage. We thought it would be a simple show of force that would lead to quick negotiations. His voice got angry. Instead, we set off a chain of events that destroyed 23 of our ships, disabled more than half of our home fleet, led to the arrest and prosecution of our top military officers, and ruined the reputation of our empire. Other species that used to fear us now wonder if we can even protect ourselves. Allies are rethinking their alliances. Our entire galactic standing has been shattered. He looked straight into the camera one last time. Don't make the same mistake we did. The cost of learning this lesson on your own is way too high. Humanity has made a new rule in this galaxy, and it's simple. Don't start something you can't finish because humans will always finish it. Always. Without exception. They will never show mercy to those who threaten their people, and they will chase you to the ends of the galaxy if they have to. The transmission was over. In military academies and strategic planning rooms all over the galaxy, the message was received and carefully studied. There were new rules written. They came up with new training programs. New rules for diplomacy were set up. Don't wake the humans became a common saying in the military of the galaxy. It meant, don't mess with a force that won't stop until the job is done. Admiral Kate Morrison was sitting in a quiet office at military headquarters on Earth, going over reports about the Zelvari incident. The mission had gone off without a hitch. All of the hostages were safely freed. Everyone who is responsible is in jail. And most importantly, a clear message sent to the galaxy about what happens when people have to fight back against aggression. General Robert Hayes walked into her office with his own reports. He sat down across from her and said, "The Zelvari Council has officially approved the peace treaty. Full compliance with all terms. They have left all disputed areas, turned over all personnel involved in the raid, and agreed to permanent monitoring to make sure it doesn't happen again." Morrison nodded. What did other species do? Exactly what we hoped for. Diplomatic inquiries are up by 300%. Several governments that were previously hostile or neutral are asking for formal alliance talks. And this is the most important part. We've seen a big drop in aggressive behavior near our borders. No one wants to be the next Zelvari. Good, Morrison said in a low voice. The best fights are the ones you don't have to have. Hayes agreed. Threxus did us a favor by airing those shows. It's better that everyone learns from the Zelvari's mistake than that we have to do this operation again. Morrison said, speaking of which, I think we should cut back on our forward deployments. We've made our point, and now it's time to go back to normal operations and show the galaxy that we're not looking for more fights. Okay, I'll give the orders. Morrison turned to look out her window at the blue planet below as Hayes left. People have never wanted to be feared. They only wanted to explore the galaxy in peace, build their civilization, learn new things and meet new species. But if someone threatened that peace or attacked their people, humanity would respond with all of their strength and determination. The galaxy had been told. Not by making threats or bragging but by showing. And the message was clear. It's not impossible to escape from people because they are faster, stronger, or have better technology. It's not possible because people never give up. Once they make a promise, they will keep it no matter how long it takes, even if it means traveling across years, star systems, and the whole galaxy. That wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a real warning. That was just who they were. And now everyone knew it.